42a, 10, 12 lines from the bottom. Continuing with the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, so a deaf mute or a deranged or a minor has a claim that you owe him $100, let's say. And you respond, I only owe you 50. So even though generally that should be a good case of partial admission, you'd be liable to oath, but not if it's coming from one of them. My time, what's the reasoning? Amar Kra, ki yitain ish, when a man, el re'ehu, he gives his friend either kesav or kenan lishmor, money or vessels to guard. The ain nesinas katan klum, a child giving you something is not a valid giving. He doesn't have the requisite amount of knowledge to do that. However, the next part of the Mishnah says, aval nishbayin lekatan ulaktish. Sounds like there's some case of a katan of a minor and of hektish. We'll see what that means. Of property that was given over to the Beis Hamikdash, that you do make a shvuah. So says the Gemara, v'ha amres reisha einish banal tainish shotavakatan. You just told me that there is no oath when you're involved with someone who doesn't have the requisite amount of knowledge, and now you're telling me that there's some case where there is. So I think we're going to have two suggestions. One is Amarav Biba B'Tainas Aviv. It's interesting. The katan is not coming for his own money. He's coming that you owe his father money. His father's owed money. So we just said that the reason why a minor is not subject to this oath is because his giving is not considered a giving. But here it's really could be his father gave, and therefore he wants the money back. And if that would be true, that would be the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who doesn't say this case, but he has a similar case. And we're putting the two together. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, the Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, he says, sometimes you can cause yourself to make an oath of partial admission. We're always talking about somebody claims and somebody responds. But he says sometimes you could do it to yourself. What's the case? Ketzad. Amar lo mana la'avicha biadi. He said, listen, I have your father's money, $100 in my possession, but you should know that I already paid you back 50. So the guy on his own is saying, I owed your father 100. I paid him back 50 already. So says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Harei ze nishba. He has to now make an oath of partial admission. V'zeu shenishba tainas atzma. That's what it means. He makes an oath on his own claim. So the Gemara is now assuming, just like this person can make an oath on his own when it's regarding the other guy's father, so too the katan, when the katan saying, you owe my father money, and the person responds and says, I already paid your father back, so that should also be, you should also be liable. So since he holds the person himself can make this oath, therefore the Gemara assumes that he would agree in our Mishnah that by a minor that would work also if you're coming with the claim of your father, not your own claim.
His father's not alive.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Yeah. Rashi says that a child coming on behalf of his father is no worse than a guy coming on behalf of himself. So he should agree to that. So now we're going to have a little bit of a technicality within Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, to which we're going to have to find a new opinion for our Mishnah. So the Chachamim, though, in that brisa, they argue on Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and they say, Chacham Orim Einu Ela K'mei Shaveda. K'mei Shaveda is always like the term that's used for somebody who's not obligated, because Mei Shaveda, you're returning a lost item, so you could have said nothing. You could have said, you didn't have to say, I have your lost item. You told them you have the item. I have 3 of your pens. 3, you owe me 6. Well, I didn't have to say anything. The fact that I said something shows that I'm a believable guy. So to hear the Chacham say, Einu Ela K'mei Shaveda, he's admitting to owing him half the amount, and therefore he's like a meishiv aveda, and therefore he's going to be exempt. I didn't really. Maybe the footnote answers this. I don't know exactly, but usually a meishiv aveda is you said X, you could have said X plus. The fact that you said X, sorry, you said X, you could have said nothing. The fact that you said X, you're a believable guy. Here, I mean, he's saying everything. He's saying, I borrowed $100 from your father. I paid back 50. So where's the other 50? How does that? Why are you exempt from making an oath on that? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't sure about that. Yeah. So the Chachamim say that you're like a meishiv aveda, and therefore you're. Oh, I guess no. This is what it means. Okay, I got it. Just figured it out. The guy didn't have to say anything, so we're not going to make him liable for an oath. He could have said nothing, just like the guy returning a lost object. So when he's coming and saying something, so we're not going to make him make an oath. He's exempt from making an oath because he could have kept quiet. So what?
I said it's almost a migu.
It is a migu. Yeah, I think Rashi learns meishiv aveda is a migu. Yeah, that's very similar. What might be? Yeah. So what happens with the other 50? I mean, he still has to pay, right? He admits that he owes it.
Right.
So he has to pay, but he doesn't have to make an oath. Right? Because the guy wants all $100. Right? Mm-hmm. The guy wants all $100, and this guy comes and says, "I owe you. I already paid you 50. So we believe you on that. We're going to believe you, and you'll obligate the other 50, but you don't have to make an oath." So now, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Leslay meishiv aveda pater. Don't you agree to this concept of meishiv aveda? The guy could have said nothing, and he came and he said something, so he should be exempt from an oath. So the Gemara really accepts that. He says, Amar Rav b'shetaino katan. You're right, but it's where according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, it's where the claim is coming from a minor. Says the Gemara, katan, he can't make a claim. But Hamer's einish bayin al tainas cheresh of the katan. For sure, that's not the case. You can't have a katan, a minor, coming and making himself obligated for an oath, because we say that minors are not obligated in an oath. So we say, you're right. Le'olam gadol, it's talking about an adult. However, v'amai karilei katan, why do we call him a katan? Dilegabe mile da'avua katanu. Because compared to the words of his father, he's a minor. Meaning he doesn't know, his father's not around anymore, and he's not sure. I mean, he doesn't know with 100% certainty exactly what his father owed or not. So if his father was here, he would know for certainty how much he's owed. So since he's not as sure as his father, we call him a minor. He's a minor regarding the claim in terms of its certainty. So says the word, if that's the case, you want to make this brisa with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and the Chachamim. So then the Gemara starts off, what's a case where you can swear on your own claim? If you just told me that the case is where you're swearing about your father's debts, so that's not your own claim, that's a claim for somebody else. So it doesn't sound like that's the case that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is saying. So says the Gemara, no, it's tainas acherim, it's you're right, it's someone else's claim, but it's hodas atzmo, but it's my admission. So it still is mine, because I admitted to owing the money of someone else's father. So, but says the Gemara, every case of modeh b'miktas, of partial admission, is like that. It's someone else's claim and your partial admission. Someone else claims you owe the money and you admit partially. So that's nothing unique about Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. It sounds like this brisa of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov was something unique about himself that the Chacham argue on. This is not unique at all. So says the Gemara, turning the page, Kulu nami tanas acherim adas hatzun inu. Every case of partial admission is like that. So the Gemara says, okay, fine, you're right. Rather, the dispute between Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and the Chachamim is about something else. And this is actually interesting because it really tells us the reasoning for this modeh b'miktas. They're really arguing ela b'dirabba kamiflagi. They're really arguing in terms of what Rabbah holds. Now, Rashi explains, we're going back. Really, the case is a minor is arguing, he's claiming, and he's saying that I have $100 from your father, but I already paid back partially. Now, right. So in this case, it wasn't that the minor gave anything, and now they're swearing about that. He was given something from somebody else. So he said, I was given something from your father. I already paid back half. So that's the case. And that's going to be a dispute between Rabbi Eliezer, who says you're going to be exempt, and the Chachamim. So the case is a minor who's saying, I got from your father X amount. I paid back partially. Rabbi Eliezer holds you're exempt, and the Chachamim hold you're going to be obligated. You're going to be obligated. So what's that? So let's see. Damar Rabba mipnei ma. So now we're going to go general and then zoom in for a second. So general mipnei ma amar Torah modeh b'miktzas hatayni yishava. What's the rationale behind the fact that the Torah obligates somebody to make an oath when there's a partial admission? Now the reason is it's a verse in the Torah, but what's the rationale? It's because there's a chazaka, there's a assumption, a presumption. Ein adam meis panav b'fnei bal chova. If a guy says you owe me $1,000, a person is not going to be so brazen to deny in front of the person that gave him money. Now Rashi explained in another place. What's the reason? Someone who did you a favor, he lent you money. You're not gonna go and you won't be so brazen to deny that. According to that, if you're holding someone's deposit for them, they didn't do you a favor. This presumption won't apply. According to Rashi, it's all coming from the fact that someone did you a favor. Someone did something nice to you, you're not going to look them in the face and lie. But that only applies by a loan. It doesn't apply by if you're holding someone's object for them, right? If you're holding someone's object for them, so you're doing them a favor, not they're doing you a favor. But others argue, but that's just okay. So, anyways, the presumption is a person not so brazen to go and deny to his lender right in the face. So, okay, if that's true, so really, he's not going to deny the whole thing. So he's not going to lie to his creditor. So v'hayi bekule bayi delich. So if he wasn't so brazen to deny, so obviously if he were to deny the whole thing, we would believe him, because he would never be so chutzpahdik to deny the claim. So he should have denied the whole thing, and then we would have believed him, because a person not so brazen. If a guy really didn't lend you $1 million, you wouldn't lie. So when you say you owe me nothing, you're for sure believed. So why didn't he do that? V'hai delay kafrei. So he didn't deny the whole thing. Must be mishum de'eno meiz b'fnei bal chova. He didn't deny the whole thing because he's not so brazen to deny the whole thing. Okay. Well, if he owes everything, he should say, I owe you everything. You owe me $1 million? Yes, I do. Ubekule baidlodele. So then if we assume the guy's not a liar from the fact that he wouldn't deny, a guy comes and says, you owe me $1 million, a guy wouldn't look him in the face and deny that. So then why not just admit to it fully? So ubekule baidlodele. So just admit that I owe you everything. So really, he should have. He should have admitted to everything. The person is just delaying. It's just delaying. So once again, a guy claims you owe me X amount of money. So a guy is not going to be so brazen to deny that. Okay. So we assume he's telling the truth. Okay. Well, when the guy claims $1 million, why didn't you admit to $1 million? We assume you're not going to lie to the guy. So you only admitted to owing him $500,000. Why don't you admit fully? Right? You're obviously a trustworthy guy. You're not going to lie to your creditor. So the answer is you're right. He really could have admitted to the whole thing because he's a trustworthy guy. The reason why he didn't was because he's pushing it off. He doesn't have the cash yet. So when he says, I owe you $500,000, we assume not that he's lying, we assume that he's delaying. And on that, the Gemara, and he's sober, he thinks, until I get the money, I'll pay you back. I don't have cash yet. So that's what the Torah says. Make him make a swear. Right now, make him make a swear. This guy is partially admitting to the money. So right now, make him take a shvuah. Why? Ki heichi delo dilei bekule. In order that we have him fully admit to the whole thing. If a guy claims $1 million and you admit to only owing half of that, so now we say make a shvuah, and now we're going to see, do you actually owe it or not? So you'll be forced to either the guy actually, the creditor, messed up and he mistaken that you owe $1 million, and you're telling the truth, you only owe him $500,000, then you'll make an oath. On the other hand, if you actually owe $1 million, you're going to admit, you're faster to admit that you owe the other $500,000 than you are to make an oath falsely. So it's a way to get us to have you admit that you owe the creditor, so the creditor shouldn't lose out his money. So that's all what the rationale for a partial oath is, to basically get a guy to admit that he owes the money. If he really doesn't owe the money, then he'll make an oath. Now, remember, our case is that the minor is coming and saying, your father gave me money, I paid back partially. Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov Savar lo shna bo velo shna b'beno. A person is not going to eino meiz. A person won't be so brazen. This idea that a guy is not going to be so brazen to deny his creditor. Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov, whether the guy's father was your creditor, right? In the case that the guy's father was your creditor, you won't be so brazen to lie to him, even though it's a son. So it's not the actual guy that gave you the money; it's the guy's son. But still, you would never lie to a guy like that either. Therefore, if nobody claimed anything and you altruistically came and said, your father lent me money, I paid you back half of it, you could have said nothing. Since you spoke up, you're like a Meishu Aveda, like a guy returning a lost object, and therefore you're totally exempt. The Rabbanan Savri, they say no, that's only true. You're coming on your own, your altruistic self, and you're not going to lie to the guy. That's when you're looking your creditor in the face, when you're looking to the father in the face. Rabbanan Savri b'fan of who the eino meiz. But in front of his son, you still would be brazen. You could be brazen to lie in front of the creditor's son. Therefore, they're going to say that the whole idea is like Steve was saying, it's idea of migu, right? You could have said nothing, you said something. So if I wanted to lie, I would have lied better. So, well, you would never lie to your creditor, right? Or your creditor's son. Therefore, we see you're an honest guy. The Rabbanan say, no. To your creditor, right, you wouldn't lie. So you come out of left field and say, I actually owe you money, but I paid back half of it. Yes, to the guy that gave you the money, you say, listen, if I wanted to lie, I could have lied better, but I didn't. But to the guy's son, what do you mean? We don't say you're such an honest guy, because a person would be brazen to look at his creditor's son in the face and maybe not be telling the truth. So therefore, you don't have that same chazaka, that same presumption that you're not a brazen guy when you're talking about the creditor's son. Yeah. Now, okay. V'Rabbanan Savi b'fanav hu de'eino meiz, abal b'fnei b'no meiz, umidelo meiz, from the fact that he didn't deny, so he's a meishiv avedahu. He's someone who. Right. Sorry. According to Gleizer ben Yaakov, he obligates you an oath because we assume the same thing we would assume by the creditor, we assume by the son, and therefore when you admit partially, so therefore we think that you're probably you're for sure not lying. You're not lying at all. So therefore you're partially admitting, and therefore you're liable an oath. But the Rabbanan hold the fun of who the eino meiz abal b'fnei b'no meiz. In front of, sorry, I think I flipped it. According to Gleizer ben Yaakov, you are obligated in an oath. According to the Rabbanan, you're exempt from an oath. Why? According to the rabbis, in front of the son, you would be brazen enough to lie. And from the fact that you came and said that you borrowed money and you owe money, that makes you a Meishiv Aveda. We believe you because you really would have been brazen even in front of the son. Not even, you would have brazen in front of the son because the son is not your creditor. And therefore, from the fact that you didn't lie, you came and you said something, we see you're an honest guy. According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, you never would have been brazen even to the son. And therefore, when you come and say something, we don't view you like a Meishiv Aveda. oh look, he's such an honest guy because he could have lied. No, a guy wouldn't lie to his creditor or to his creditor's son the same way a regular partial admission Moed Mikzas case would be. And therefore, Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov says it's a case of Moed Mikzas, and the Chachamim say, since if you wanted to keep quiet, you could have kept quiet and never mentioned that you owe anybody money because it's your creditor's son. When you get up and you say, I do owe you money, we believe you, and therefore you're not obligated to make any kind of oath. Okay, so after all the dust settles, we're saying that our Mishnah that had the case where the guy says, your father owed me money, I paid back partially, that's going to be the opinion of Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov. Says the Gemara, Mimatzis Mukmas Lak Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov. Can you really make our Mishnah the opinion of Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov? Look at the earlier case in the Mishnah, Hakatani Reisha, Manal Abba Biyadcha, and Ein Lecha Biyadi Ella Chamishim Dinner Pater Mipnei Shemesha Avedahu. So the earlier case in the Mishnah was where the guy says my father's money is in your possession, and the guy responds, not 100, only 50. So there we say the person's a Meishav Aveda because he could have really said nothing, because the guy that's claiming my father's money is by you is not such a substantial claim, because he doesn't exactly know if his father paid back or didn't pay back. So the guy could respond, I owe your father nothing, and that would be fine. And yet he says something, he's considered a Meishav Aveda. So it sounds like, according to Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov, when in this case it's the creditor's son claiming money, and yet the defendant is called a Meishav Aveda. He's someone who is like a Meishav Aveda, someone like returning a lost object, and therefore we believe him and we don't make him make a swear. But according to Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov, we just explained that when it comes to a son claiming, well, in that case it was the minor claiming that the other guy's father owed him money, we said he's not a Meishav Aveda. It's a regular case of partial admission. But the earlier part of the Mishnah regarding someone's father's claims told us that the guy is considered a Meishav Aveda. So which one is it? Do we just trust the guy when he's admitting that that he owes someone's father's money, or do we not trust the guy? So according to Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov, it's not consistent. Either make up your mind. Either when you're talking about someone's father's claims, you're going to be taking an oath, or you're very believable and we don't put an oath on you. So says the Gemara, it could still be Rabbi Dovid ben Yaakov. It just depends what the claim is. Hasim de Omer Barili, Hakad Omer Barili. Barili is always like 100% claim. I know with certainty he owes money. So when the guy says that, so then you're going to have to make a partial oath. The case where you're exempt, the earlier part of the Mishnah, is the guy when he says, you have my father's money in your possession, he's not coming with 100% certainty. He's saying, whatever it is, I think, or I was told, or that you actually owe my father money. In that case, when the father's son's claim is not so certain, it's only with partial certainty, then we view the defendant as someone who is, if he comes and says, I only have half of it, then he's a trustworthy guy. So when a guy comes with 100% certainty and says, you for sure owe money, even regarding a father's claims, so then when the guy responds that I only owe you half of the money, then it's going to be a regular case of partial admission, even though it's referring to the father's possessions. In this case of the Mishnah where you're exempt, it's because the guy's saying, I heard you owe my father money. I'm pretty sure you owe my father money. Last I recalled, you owe my father money. Those kinds of cases. So really, that's not such a 100% certainty. That's not such a good claim. So now when the guy responds, I do owe him money, but I only owe him half the money that you're saying. I don't owe him $1 million. I owe him $500,000. So since the claim came with a lack of certainty, the guy could have been kept quiet, and therefore he would have owed nothing, because a claim with partial certainty cannot extract money from somebody. The fact that he admitted that he does owe something, that makes him like a Meishav Aveda, like someone who's returning a lost object, and therefore he's going to be exempt from an oath. Okay, that was all one way to establish our Mishnah that said that a katan, there will be a case where the katan, the minor, is obligated to make an oath when it's regarding his father's possessions. In that case, we do make an oath on behalf of meaning the minor claims that you have his father's money. The guy partially admits. In that case, we say that you are obligated to make an oath, even though the claim came from a minor. Shmuel is going to argue. It sounds like no, even the claim coming from a minor is not going to be good enough. What's the case where you're obligated to make an oath? It's a case Amar lekatan, Shmuel Amar lekatan, lipare menichse katan, or lehektish lipare menichse hektish. So you want to come collect your money. So really, Reuven owed Shimon money, and he never paid back. Now Reuven died, so Shimon wants to come and collect from the orphans. So that's a case where you want to collect from the orphans, you have to make an oath. Alternatively, Reuven owed Shimon money, and before Reuven paid back, he consecrated all his property to give it to the Beis Hamikdash. And now Shimon owes money. So now Reuven's not here anymore, or maybe Reuven is here. But so if you're coming to collect from hektish, from things that from the Beis Hamikdash, you can only collect while making an oath. You can't just take away from an orphan or take away from things that are sanctified without a shvuah. So that's what Shmuel says is the case in our Mishnah. Says the Gemara that we're going to see hopefully sooner than later in 2-3 daf from now that Tanina menichse yisomim lo yipar ela b'shvuah. We know that already. That general rule. The rabbis established that you have to make an oath whenever you collect from the property of orphans. Period. So tartilamoli. Why are you teaching me again over here in our Mishnah on Mem Aleph? You'll teach me the same thing in a Mishnah coming up in 2 daf from now. So why tell me the same thing twice? Hakamash one, there's a certain novelty. What's the novelty? Like the Abai the elder. What did Abai the elder say? The Tanya Abai Kashisha Yisomim Sh'amru Gedolim Ve'ein Sarach Lo Marktanim Bein L'Shvua Bein L'Ziboris. So not only are we talking about orphans, that's the later Mishnah, but that's by orphans that are already adults. But even by orphans that are the other way around. For sure, orphans that are ketanim, that are young children, for sure you can only collect with an oath. You can't take advantage of them. However, orphans that are grown-ups, so maybe we never established that you have to make a shvuah in that case. So that would be a novelty, that even if though the orphan is now an adult, if you want to collect from orphans, you always have to make an oath. And also, bein leziboris, ziboris is not the highest quality of property. It's like the middle quality fields. So whenever you're collecting from orphans, you're always collecting from not their best quality, not from the idus. Idus is the best quality. Rather from ziboris, it's the lower quality fields. That applies not only by orphans that are children, which for sure you're not going to take away their best quality lands. So if you owe $100, but if they owe you $100 now, and you made an oath, and now and you collect from their fields, but one field is a much better field. It's a much higher quality field. So it's a better location. Maybe you won't take that field. You won't take let's say 1 acre of the best field. You'll take 2 acres of a lower quality field. That applies not only from orphans that are children that are under 13, but even orphans that are adults, even gedolim. That's the rule. When you collect from them, you only collect with a shvuah, and you also only collect from the lower level property. So says the Gemara lehektish. The fact that I collect from hektish with a shvuah, I know that already. Lipari menichse hektish tanina. That is also a Mishnah coming up. Same Mishnah over there. Menichasim mishubadim lo yifaru ela b'shvuah. Whenever I collect from property that has a lien on it, I collect with a shvuah. So you owed me money. Your property had a lien onto me. You went and consecrated it. So I know already that property, any real estate, I can only collect with a shvuah. Who cares if it's real estate that belongs to a regular person, or it's real estate that belongs to the temple? Either way, the rule is when you collect from real estate, it's done only with an oath. So what's the novelty of our Mishnah? That, but you should know this real estate of sanctity, you have to make an oath. All real estate, when you're collecting, has to be done only through the means of an oath. It's strict. So imagine Reuben owed Shimon money, and Reuben already paid him back. However, they're going to make a deal let's pull shtick. What are they going to say? Reuben's going to say that so now let's say Reuben owes Shimon money, and Reuben has property. Now Reuben really already paid back Shimon. He also sold some of his property to Levi. He did some business. Fine. So they might come together and be like, and they'll say, listen, I'm going to claim from you money, and I'm going to pretend like you never paid me back, and now I'm going to be able to go and collect back from your creditors, and get that back, and then we could split it. So therefore, whenever you collect from property that has a lien, you have to make sure you do it with an oath, because we don't want these situations where the lender and the borrower can come together to get back that property that was sold. That's all true by a regular person, by a regular mundane property, but by hektish, when it comes to property of sanctity, so no one, we would have thought that no one's going to go and collect, and even though Reuben owes Shimon money and he paid him back, in the meantime, though, he consecrated his property, we're not going to think that they're going to come together and take property from the base of Mikdash. So therefore, we would have never imagined that you have to make an oath when you're coming to collect from real estate of the Temple Mount of the base of Mikdash. Kamash Malan, that no, there still is some level of a worry that people would do this, and therefore, even though the property has been sanctified, you have to, if you're going to go collect from it, if you actually are owed money from Reuven, and Reuven owes you money, and in the meantime he's consecrated his real estate, and now it's time to pay you back, and he has nothing to pay you back with, and you go to the Temple Mount and you go to the Gaba and you tell him, I need your property, I need that property back that Reuven consecrated, you have to make an oath before collecting that. Says the Gemara, is that really true? That people would actually, you would think people would pull shtick, they would do these tricks when it comes to sanctity, really? Yeah, the Homer of Huna, look at the case. A guy on his deathbed says, Shehiktish kol nechasav. He all of a sudden, he sanctified all his property. And now on his deathbed, he's saying, oh, by the way, Amar Mana Leploni, that guy is owed Amar Mana Leploni Biadi, that I actually owe some money to that guy after he already consecrated all of his money to Hektish. So if the guy's really pulling some kind of shtick, and they can go, and now they're making a deal that you really paying back already, but I'll give you a chance to go take from the Temple Mount, from the base of Mikdash. So then we shouldn't believe him, because maybe we're worried that he's pulling some kind of shtick. Yet we say, if all the property is consecrated, and now the guy in his deathbed says that Mana Leploni Biyadi, that person is really owed money. I owe him money, and now you're gonna have to go take from the sanctity to pay him back. He is believed. He is Naaman. So you see, when we're coming to take money back from property that was sanctified, we don't assume that a guy is pulling some kind of shtick. We assume he's telling the truth. He's not going to try to take money dishonestly from the Temple Mount. Says the Gemara, you can't bring a proof from a guy in his deathbed. Why? Chazaka ein adam osa. Oh, sorry. Let's finish the sentence. Naaman, why? Chazaka ein adam osa kinunya al hektish. You see, he's believed, even though they now have to go and take money from sanctity to pay back this guy. However, we don't assume that people are pulling these games when it comes to sanctified property. So says Gemara, you can't bring a proof from a guy in his deathbed. Why? Amri hani mili shemira dein adam chotev lo, because on his deathbed, he has nothing to gain. He's about to die. So the assumption is a line that's quoted often, a guy doesn't sin when he has nothing in it for himself. Every sin, there's some vested interest. So therefore, the guy's about to die. That's why you don't assume that he's going to pull some kind of shtick, because what does he get? What does he gain? he's about to die. Aval gabe bari, when it comes to a healthy person, for sure there is a worry. There is a worry that two people will come together and they'll extract money from sanctity. Therefore, we make them make an oath. Okay. Next Mishnah. The elu dvarim she'enish ban aleihem. The following things you never make a shvuah, you never make an oath about. Avadim, servants, the hashtaros, documents, the hakarkos, land, the hekdeshos, or property, consecrated property. So that's one. Ein bahem tashlume kefel v'lo tashlume arba v'chamisha. If you steal these things that are sanctified or documents, things like that, there's no fine, there's no kefel, and there's also no arba v'chamisha. There's no paying back 4 or 5. Okay. Shomer chinam, a person who is right, there's 4 kinds of watchmen. So the watchman not just doing it for free. He's not getting paid anything. So when you're claiming about him, that you want the object back, and did you steal it and things like that, he says no. So we don't make him make an oath. Shomer chinam eino nishba. It means about these things, right? It doesn't mean in general. Right? How do they translate it? Shomer chinam eino nishba, about these items, right? What is that? Concerning them, right? The things we're just talking about where there's no oath. So in the event that a shomer chinam would make a regular oath in a regular case, not by these things. No say sachar eina mishalim. A guy who gives a paid watchman who has to pay if it's stolen or lost, by these things, he does not have to. Let's say he's watching someone's document that's owed money, or is watching someone's consecrated property for them. He does not have to pay back if it gets stolen or lost. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon argues and says things that are consecrated, that have a lien on them, that have an insurance policy on them, those you would make a shvuah about, and the ones that are just, let's say, things that you're not liable, like movables, which there's no insurance on the movables, that you would not make an oath about. Sorry. That's the wrong case. Sorry. Things that you're obligated to replace. Meaning, there's 2 ways that a guy could say he owes things to the let's say the animal to hektish, to the temple. Either he could say Hare alai ola, it's upon me to bring an offering, or he could say Hare zu, this animal is going to be brought. So when he says Hare alai, it's upon me to bring a cow as an offering, and he separates this animal to bring as his offering, and he gives it to somebody. So and that gets lost, that he has to make an oath about, because when you say Hare alai, it's upon me to bring this animal as an offering. So no matter what happens to that, you have to bring an animal. If you say Hare zu, this specific animal will be brought as an offering, and that animal gets lost, so you don't have to replace it. So whenever you have to replace, you have to replace the offering that you've sanctified in the event that it gets lost or stolen. So then on that you would make a shvuah. But things that you don't have to replace, if you use the terminology of Hare zu, you would not have to make a shvuah upon those. Rabbi Meir Omer yesh dvarim shehem bekarka ve'enu kekarka. This I'll have to see in the Gemara to talk about. There are things that are like land but are not like land. The ein chachamim modlan, chachamim don't agree. What that is exactly, we have to see. So, okay, Ketzad, what's the case? Eser gefanim to unos. You have 10 grapevines that are, what's to unos? It's full of grapes, right? It's loaded with grapes. Yeah. So I gave you 10 grapevines full of grapes, and the guy says, einu ela chamish. No, you only gave me 5. Rabbi Meir says that you're mechayev shvuah. That no, kol mechuber lekarka, hareu kekarka. Since it's attached to the ground, has the same law as the ground, and just like you don't make an oath on land, you don't make an oath on things attached to land either. You only make an oath. A guy says you owe me something. It's only when it's something which has a definite amount, but not something which is not precisely identifiable. For example, Ketzad, bayis mole, I said, here means like imagine a shed full of produce. I gave you a full shed of produce. So, a shed full of apples I gave you. Now, or Bekismali, I gave you a wallet full of money. Masarti lach. V'hala omer eni odeo. Ela masha inachta tanotel putter. So when a guy claims I gave you a house full of produce or a wallet full of money, and you respond, I don't know, only what you gave me, that's what I have, there you're exempt, because that's too general. How much is a house full of produce? How much is a wallet full of money? That's not something which is precise, identifiable. When it's 10 apples, no 5 apples, that is clear. This is not like that. Ze omer ad haziz, I gave you the apples or the produce up until this point in my shed. Vize omer ad chalon, he says, no, not up to that point, only up to the window. That you're going to be chayiv, because that's also very identifiable, exactly how much you gave. So that's the case of modu mitzvahs. Okay. Tashlume kefal. How do you know that you don't pay, that you don't make why tashlume kefal? Tashlume kefal minalan. How do you know that there's no? Oh, that these things, land, documents, servants, things that are consecrated, don't have kefal, don't have the penalty of paying double. How do I know? Minalan, the Tana Rabbanan, it says a klal pratu klal. Al kol davar pesh, on anything which there's negligence. Someone gives somebody something, he's negligent with it. So on anything, it sounds like you'd have to pay. Then it says ala shor v'ala chamor, only an ox and a donkey, v'ala san, a sheep, v'ala salma, and someone's clothing. Prat, that's very specific. That's not anything anymore. That defines for you what it is. Only these things. And then it says al kol aveda, on any lost object, where you say kihuzeh, on any lost object that someone claims and you admit partially, you have to make a shvuah. So on any lost object, that's very general. Al kol aveda chazor klal klal pratu klal iyatadan elakein prat. So a klal pratu klal, you only have to only thing that's included is what is specified in the middle. So what is that? All these cases of an animal and an item of clothing. Maha prat mefurish davar metatel v'gufa mammon. Just like the specific is something which is immovable, it's an animal. V'gufa mammon, and it itself is money. Therefore, af kol davar metal, whatever is movable, and it itself is money, will be subject to this part of the Torah, which includes in it paying the fine of kefil. So that comes to exclude yatsu karkosh, ein metalfin yatsu avadim shukshel karkos. Karka, which is not movable, is excluded. Avadim, which are always juxtaposed to land, are excluded. Yatsu shtaros, documents, which it itself is not money, it represents money. Sh'afal pisha hein metaltlin ein gufa mammon. Even though it's immovable, but it itself is not money, so therefore that's all excluded. Hekdish, the reason why consecrated property there's no fine, because it says re'ehu. Re'ehu sounds like only things that are mundane, but not things that are consecrated. So those are why all these things are not subject to the penalty of kefil if they are stolen. Now, they're also not subject to paying 4 or 5. If the sheep was a consecrated sheep and you stole it, slaughtered it, and sold it, you are not obligated to pay 4 or 5. Why? The way 4 and 5 works is only in the event that it's subject to double. Only when it's subject to double, it's going to be, you'll be liable 4 or 5. Meaning, if the sheep is worth $100 and it's stolen and it's shechted and it's sold, so you have to pay for I think it's $400. So that's only because you have to pay $200, and therefore now you have to pay $400. But in the case of a consecrated sheep, there's no double. There's no paying double. So therefore, you took away that fine. So all you have left is really now not 4 or 5. You're left with 3 or 4 because that part's taken away. And the Torah says you have to pay 4 or 5 and not 3 or 4. So it only applies whenever you have the fine of double. So then you say you have to pay 4 or 5. But if there's no double, then you're paying only 3 or 4, and that's not what the Torah said. A shomer chinam doesn't make a shvuah on all these things, and now it's just going to repeat itself. It's just saying that there's no oaths on land, on documents, and on conscience. It's going to be the same thing. So no matter who you are, you don't make an oath. How do I know that you don't make an oath on all these things? just going to be repetitive. The Tanur Rabbanan Kitan Isha Reu Klal Kesav Kollel Prat. No, I mean, not fully repetitive, but the Brisa says that, sorry, not repetitive, it's going to be very similar. It says when a person gives somebody something, sounds like anything, klal, anything. Then it says kesef okelim, it says only money or vessels, prat, lishmor. So prat sounds like only money or vessels. Lishmor, anything he's guarding, he has to go make an oath that he didn't harm it, he didn't steal it. Chazor v'klal, klal prat the klal, yetan elakena prat, ma prat mefurish. Davar metaltal v'gufa mamon, I've called davar metaltal v'gufa mamon, yatsu karkos, ein metaltal, yatsu avadim, shokshul karkos, yatsu shtarosh, avapisha metaltal, ein gufa mamon, hektish re'eu ksiv. So in this section it says anything, then it says money or vessels. So money or vessels are either things that are movables, like vessels, or it's money. So only something which is movable, so not including real estate, or something which is money, not including a document. Those things are excluded from an oath that the Shomer Chinam has to make. How do I know that consecrated property is also excluded? Because it says re'ehu, only things that are given to somebody, but not to hektish. Hektish is not re'ehu. Re'ehu is your friend, to give to your friend things, but things that are that the temple owns, that's not considered re'ehu. So we exclude that from somebody who has to make an oath. Now, here's where it's repetitive. No say sachar einu sham, a paid watchman does not make an oath either if the object gets stolen or lost. He doesn't have to pay if the object gets stolen or lost, even though usually if it gets lost or stolen, you do have to pay, but not by these items, by consecrated items and by documents. Why not? It says if someone gives you something, anything, then it says chamor or shor oseh. It's only a donkey, an ox, or a sheep. Prat, very specific. V'chol behema lishmor. Any animal you're watching, if it gets lost or stolen, you have to pay. Chazor v'klal, it goes and repeats itself again. Klal u'pratu klal, that it's only something which is going to be a movable, or it itself is money. The Gemara says, etc. Basically, therefore, land is excluded and documents are excluded because they're not movables, or they themselves money. Hektish, how do I know that hektish that you're not liable for? Because it says re'ehu. It says only when you give to your friend and that gets lost or stolen, then you have to pay. But give it over to the temple, that if that gets lost or stolen, then those items get lost or stolen, those you don't have to pay. Okay.
Go on.
We'll stop here.
Who would